Wives for Africa Director Advocate Brenda Madumise-Pajibo joins us now for more on that story. Advocate, good to have you, and thank you very much for coming on this evening, fresh off the two-day convention preparing for national dialogue on the gender-based violence issues. Of course, this is one of the issues that would need to firmly be discussed by the nation as to how we certainly deal with it. There's a communication in the community generally that this child and the entire family would have generally been living in an abusive environment. What does our law say about a mother's ability to mother being badly undermined in a generally abusive environment, having the consequence of both mother and child being affected, but in this case, particularly the child being severely affected?
Hi, Tabo. Good evening, and thanks for having me. The responsibility is on both parents, right, to put the interest of the child in the forefront. When anyone is aware, and especially in this case, either the mother was aware that the child was being abused, or even herself that is being abused, and they had no outlet or avenue on how to deal with it, we can't then be hard on her if she is herself a victim of abuse, right? And we understand why many victims don't leave abusive relationships, and so we can't ask why didn't she leave if she was in an abusive relationship. It might have been a number of things that made it impossible for her to leave. If she was not a victim and she was complicit with her husband in the abuse of the child, then she deserves to be charged like she's charged at the moment. However, what's going to happen is that the prosecution and the team that is working on this case will have to get the facts and establish that she herself was a victim of abuse, and in that way, her capacity, especially the capacity to protect, was diminished, and the capacity to protect her child was diminished because herself was living in fear and afraid of the husband, and who was abusive towards her, abusive eventually to their daughter.
Yeah. So does the law perceive her silence, even in that instance, as encouraging the abuse?
So the number of factors that are going to be looked into, right, is to determine whether that silence there was threat to her, that if she would have spoken out, something would have happened to her, right? And that's why it becomes a mitigating factor in the case of this nature. So it's not a straight line. It's about understanding the evidence before the courts to understand what really transpired, and what is going to happen is, one, if at any point in her life she managed to open up a case against the husband that can demonstrate to the court that there was a pattern of abuse in the home, there should be witnesses, whether family members or neighbors, who can vouch for her assertions that she was abused by her husband. All those things will be taken into consideration. That abuse most times becomes a mitigating factor that you would not be dealt with. The law will not deal with you harshly because you could not be in a position to do much in that situation because you are also a victim of abuse.
Yeah, I mean, you've already mentioned that we don't ask a victim, why did you not leave? Because there are many considerations of wanting to keep it together for the children. Financial, right, economic consideration could be one of them. But within that particular perspective or that consideration, the necessity for a safety strategy, is that paramount as far as the law is concerned? If one parent, of course, perceives the other to be abusive, are the onus on the parent that is aware of that to come up with a safety strategy for the kids?
I think we're placing a huge burden on victims of abuse for them to find a safe strategy when they don't even know where to start, right? In most cases, is that individuals who are victims of violence don't know where to go. They don't know who to trust. And if they decide to leave the home, where do they go? Wherever they end up, will this individual track them down and find them and bring them back? So there are a number of considerations. So we can't place the burden, and a very onerous burden on her to say, what is the safety strategy that she had. She might not even had one. She just maybe just decided that and resigned herself to this situation, that this is her life and that's about it. And in the process, her child was abused, and eventually they've lost that child, was killed by their partner. And questions can be asked. She could have done this, she could have done that, but we are not privy to what really transpired in that home, what was going on in that home. Only herself and her partner are able to share all of that, and that's what has to be ventilated in an open court on what really happened. But abuse most of the time is that there's a third party who is fully aware of it, that is going on, right? Whether it's a neighbor, whether it's a friend, they would have been aware. Most times people don't want to get involved because they think that it's a private matter. And I think where we are as a society, there's nothing private about where you witness abuse. You need to take step, even if you anonymously go to the police and make them aware. Talk to social workers to make them aware that this is what's going on with your neighbors. That's what that's the vigilance that we are looking for. That we, all of us, needs to be on our tenterhooks and be able to sniff out acts of abuse and take out people, individuals in our communities who are abusive.
Yeah. Putting on your other hat, as far as the pillars of our national strategy on gender-based violence and femicide, what does that say as far as assisting victims in this particular case? For example, finding trustworthy alternative childcare, because we believe, I think she was at work, one of the neighbors says, and the father would have been left with the children at that particular point. Suppose for lack of an option as far as an affordable, if you could even afford an alternative childcare facility.
So and this is one of the challenge with South Africa, not many South Africans being aware of what kind of services are out there that are available to them that can assist them, right? So we've got shelters that are available in and around Gauteng, but they're around the country. The shelters are supposed to be, you're not supposed to know about the shelter. Is that someone will have to refer you to a shelter once you have made your case known. You make your case known to people in. The other thing, Tab, is that there are organizations that are working on the ground that community members should be aware of, that there's an NGO that is working around care and support. This is one of the pillars of the National Strategic Plan, that you've got many organizations that are found in the care and support and healing pillar that are supposed to be working on the ground, working with communities. But the challenge is that most times when you are confronted with an abusive situation at home, you really do not know where to go, because you're not trusting that you might get that help, right? And especially when you think that if you do anything, your life might be in danger. And it's possible that her life might have been in danger in this case, but she just kept on and put up a brave face and kept on going on with her life, hoping that something will change. But I think what is important is for all of us to know what kind of services are available and how we can tap onto those services. We've got the toll-free command center number at social development that we can call, that most people should call, that you'll be directed to the right services and support. People should have that number with them all the time. If you know the organizations in your communities that are working in this field, you approach them, and then they can assist you to find alternatives for you on how to remove yourself from an abusive relationship and to protect your children from an abusive situation.
Speaking of Joburg, there, Margaret Arnold saying, as much as this could also be put on government to say maybe they're not doing enough, it's by and large largely a domestic issue. But there are those within your sector that could argue that if, for example, a mother has got no economic means, she is very well then restricted in how she supports her children. So could that be looked at as one of the issues certainly that would have needed to be addressed?
Yeah, I think sometimes we can't be that reckless with statements like government can't be expected, right? So we can push it and say government guarantees the right to safety, guarantees the right to dignity, and the kind of exploitation and abuse and violence that citizens suffer in this country does not merit or even warrant dignity. So we don't get the dignity that we deserve. So I think that there should be a concerted effort by all parties, government included, to ensure that, one, we rid this country of the levels of violence meted against women and children that we see on a daily basis. There has to be that concerted effort. And the effort that is there, that the Councillor Margaret Arnold should be aware of, is that we have a national strategic plan that should have been funded so that we deal with prevention in the manner that we had set out in the NSP itself, right? So government has not done that. So that's why we'll place the blame not just squarely on government, but that it has contributed in us not being able to address and attend to prevention. And we have said it consistently and constantly over the time that for us to address gendered violence in this country on women, on children, on LGBTQI, on intersex individuals, it's a citizens' approach. It's not a women's issue. It's not activist issues. It's not selective organizations issue. It's that all of us have got a stake in getting ourselves free of violence in this country. And we all have a role to play in ensuring that happens. So we should avoid and stop thinking that this is a woman's problem and that women are problematic and take advantage of children because there's the parent or the mother is not there, that you as a father, you think that you can abuse a child who is your child. And because of impunity, and you have seen others getting away with it, you think you can also get away with it. So we all need to put our efforts as much as we can, all of us, not just a government department, not just an organization, not just one member in the community. It requires all of us to do so, and we are failing because we are selective in how we get involved. And because it doesn't affect me directly, so I will not get involved. Once it affects me directly, then I want the assistance. I want something to happen. So we need to stop being selfish and look at it holistically as a nation, that it does not bode well for this country that we've got these high levels of violence on women and children, and that when we are called upon to act and act decisively, we will be available to do so.
Advocate, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on this evening. Wise for Africa Director, Advocate Brenda Madumise-Pajibo, they're joining us on that reflection.